para, and we have to begin with, there is a divine master of nature. Okay? I start reading each sentence and we'll see whether it is clear. There is a divine master of nature and her works above her, though inhabiting her, who is our highest being and our universal self. To be one with him is to make ourselves divine. So, I'll now look at this little carefully. When Srebna uses the word master, he is talking of the personal aspect of the divine as well as the impersonal aspect of the divine. Okay? You must be very clear about that. Master of nature means personal as well as impersonal. In other words, the third level. Okay? The second level is a self, and when you are there in the self, it is the impersonal aspect of the divine that you experience. A state of consciousness, a state of freedom, a state of bliss, maybe, a state of power, but nobody is there. Okay? So, we always use these three levels, the Kshara Purusha, the Akshara Purusha, and the Uttama Purusha. So, Uttama Purusha is the supermind at that level, and there is a divine master of nature always at that level. Now, you can see very clearly, he is saying, there is a divine master of nature. Okay? He is a master of nature, but also of the, and nature includes also the third level, the lowest level. Okay? The physical world, it includes that. Okay? And her works, that means everything that is being done in the physical world is being done with their permission and their force. Okay? Master's force, and is being done, all the works being done in the physical world are through them. He doesn't directly work, he works through his assistant director, if you want. He works through nature. It is nature that is doing everything in the physical world. Making the rivers flow, making the trees grow, okay, making the sunlight come to the earth. So this is the nature which is doing all this impersonal. So now I read that sentence again carefully, you will see what he's saying. There is a divine master of nature and her works. Everything that goes on in the physical world he is doing it through nature, not directly. Above her, so above her is very clear, third level. Second level, so third level. Though inhabiting her, now look at that. The master of nature is seated in the transcendent, in his purity, but he is also there in the cosmos and he is also there in the individual. Okay, so he is there everywhere, but in a witness attitude. He is not participating in the action. Okay, in the witness attitude. So, who is our highest being and our universal self? There you are very clearly saying that the master is also the universal self. Okay? But at a slightly lower level of consciousness. Why? We will see a little later what he's saying. Okay? So, at the individual level, the divine is there in us as a psychic being, or the Ishvara is there in us, but we are absolutely ignorant of his presence in us. Okay? Then we are also absolutely ignorant of his presence in the universe. But when you make your mind silent and go to the self, then you experience the universality of the divine. Universality, not the personality. Okay? So there is slightly higher consciousness than the level 1. Then when you go to level 3, that is the absolute master. So there are grades. These grades are there. That's being discussed in this paragraph. Now, I go to the next sentence. By union with God, when he uses the word God, it is always a personal aspect. Okay? It may be and may not be the impersonal also, but God is always a personal aspect. By union with God, we enter into supreme freedom and supreme mastery. Now, he gives a slide, very interesting discussion about supreme freedom and not say supreme freedom. Freedom but not supreme, okay? Which is at the second level. By union with God, we enter into supreme freedom and supreme mastery. The ideal of the Stoic. Now, who is a Stoic? The one who, by endurance, okay, and by attempted samatha, the Rajasic Samatha, he rises to the self. So he is the one who is the ideal of the stoic. The sage who is king because by self-rule is Swarajyam. Okay? You are master of yourself. But he becomes master also of outward conditions, resembles superficially the Vedantic idea of the self-ruler and all-ruler, Swaraj Samrat. Why is saying superficially? We'll immediately understand by things which come next. Okay? But it is on a lower plane. There you are. So the lower plane that he's talking about is level 2, this self. When you realize that you are free, but you have no power to do anything on the physical world. Your body mind life will continue with its old habits. Good or bad, it continues with the old habits. So that's why it is at a lower level. Level 2 is at a lower level. Level 1 is total ignorance. The stoic kingship is maintained by force put upon self and environment. Now note the words, you are making an attempt. Okay? There is an attempt. Yoga is an attempt. So by attempting, you go to the self and then you get freedom there. Okay? It is maintained by force put upon self and environment. The entirely liberated kingship of the yogin exists naturally by the eternal royalty of the divine nature, a union with its unfettered universality. A finally unforced dwelling in its superiority to the instrumental nature through which it acts. So, 3 levels. 1, you are ignorant, you are trying to be stoic and you are trying to endure the shocks of life. Then second one, you manage somehow to climb up and you are free. Okay, but that freedom is of a lower level. He is telling you. Okay, you have no power to change your body mind life. His mastery over things is because he has become one soul with all things. Now, Sri is explaining very interestingly, to take an image from the Roman institutions, the Stoic freedom, that's level 2, Stoic freedom, is that of a libertas, the freed man. Not the word freed man, not free man, but freed man, the one who was a slave and he has now been freed, who is still really a dependent on the power that once held him enslaved. Now note the language also, who is still a dependent. If we remove the a, also it is grammatically correct. Who is still really dependent on the power is okay. But when you say who is still really a dependent, in other words, it's a noun. The dependent is a noun and not an adjective. And what's it? When a man is a slave and is freed, he has no skills of his own. So it depends on the one who has freed him. So it's a semi-freedom. You know, it's exactly like our the system in India also, bonded labor. I don't know if you have heard about it, but bonded labor was when an agriculturist or a Raja, when he has got a lot of property and he is growing rice or wheat or all that, then he would employ labor. But what he would do, he would give them a loan to begin with, and the rate of interest, the interest rate was so high that he could never pay back the interest. So he would say, you can do work on my farm free to work out your interest rates and your loan. So they would become dependent on him and he would give them a small hut somewhere on their property and they would have to work free, a little bit of food and all that. So they were exploited. So that's a free man. Now, modern days, Indian government has decided that bonded labor is not proportionate to modern times. So they have abolished bonded labor. But what happens? The bonded labor has no skill, no education, nothing. So they are dependent still on the master, the landlord. He is their master. So that's what Sri is saying. He may be free theoretically, but he has no real freedom. He still depends on the landlord. Okay, so that's the type of freedom. But the real freedom is when a man was never a slave. He is never a slave and he becomes free. That is the free man, not the freed man. So we have three levels. Level 1, you are not free at all. That's our normal condition. Level 2, you have been freed. Okay, you have been freed, but you still have no power over your body, mind, life. It's a freed man. Then finally, you go to the third level where you are truly free and you are master and Swarat and Samrat. Okay? This was the discussion. So, we will finish the paragraph. To take an image from Roman institutions, the Stoic freedom is that of the libertus, the freed man, who is still really a dependent on the power that once held him enslaved. His is a freedom allowed by nature because he has merited it. The freedom of the Gita is that of the free man, the true freedom of the birth into the higher nature, self-existent in its divinity. Whatever he does and however he lives, the free soul lives in the divine. He is the privileged child of the mansion, Balavat, who cannot err or fall because all he is and does is full of the perfect, the all peaceful, the all loving, the all beautiful. The third level. The kingdom which he enjoys, Rajyam Samriddham, is a sweet and happy dominion of which it may be said in the pregnant phrase of the Greek thinker who is Heraclitus, the kingdom is of the child. That's very interesting. The kingdom is of the child. Okay? Means to say the innocence and total freedom of that of the child. Okay? He depends, he is completely, his mother is looking after him entirely. So Balavat, also said they using the word. You go to the third level, you have no responsibility at all. You are being totally looked after by the divine. And that's very interesting because it is some sort of a slavery only. So you can put it in a very dramatic way by saying that true freedom comes when you are a slave, perfect slave to the divine. Interesting way of putting it, but that's exactly the truth. When you think you are free, you are actually bound by nature. We all think we are free, but we are really bound by nature. But when we become really a slave of the divine, okay, depend completely on him and surrender to him, then we are his slave. He is doing everything for us. But that is true freedom. So, interesting way of saying, the kingdom is of a child. Okay, that reminds me also of a very interesting phrase by Wordsworth, William Wordsworth. Okay, he said, the child is the father of the man. And that also is a very interesting phrase in English literature. The child is father of the man. What does that mean? It means to say that when the child grows up and becomes something else, the potentialities in a child get completely expressed at a later stage. Therefore, he is the originator of what he becomes later on. So, it's very similar to this one. The kingdom is of a child and is Heraclitus. I have a suspicion that Srebno was Heraclitus in Greece. First of all, he has told us very clearly that he was in Greece. That he has told us very clearly. And he has written a huge article on Heraclitus' philosophy. And those things which Heraclitus has not even probably developed, Srebno has developed in his article. Okay? And therefore, you can suspect that the past life of Heraclitus is still there in him, and he knows what Heraclitus meant. Okay, so that's why I say that it could be there. So anyway, they have come. So now it's very clear. 3 levels he has spoken about: the endurance, then titiksha, then the tamasic equality, rajasic equality, and finally the sattvic equality. And then you go to the third level. So now he has discussed tamasic equality and also rajasic equality. Remember the words he's using? Uh, Forcibly, okay? If you look up, you'll see he's using the word forcibly with force. Okay, just 1 second, I'll tell you. This stoic kingship is maintained by force put upon self and environment. You have to make an effort, and that is a rajasic effort. So, rajasic, you have to fight nature in yourself and go on. So now there is no fight at all. You are absolutely free. So this is the philosophic equality, indifference. So the stoic equality and the philosophic equality. We'll read the para. One of you has to read the para. It's quite 1 page, and then we'll discuss it. Okay. So equality is not something so simple. There is relation, you can see. And that's why it is so long, the chapter. Okay, so who will read the next one? I see today that Yasmin is not there, and Archana may not have the text. So Kiran can read or Srinti can read. Anyone. Kiran, you can read.
Okay.
The knowledge of the philosopher.
The knowledge of the philosopher is that of the true nature of mundane existence, the transience of outward things, the vanity of the world's differences and distinctions, the superiority of the inner calm, peace, light, self-dependence. It is an equality of philosophic indifference. It brings a high calm, but not the greater spiritual joy. It is an isolated freedom, a wisdom like that of the Lucerian sage, high in his superiority upon the cliff top, whence he looks down on men tossed still upon the tempestuous waters from which he has escaped. In the end, something after all, aloof and ineffective. The Gita admits the philosophic motive of indifference as a preliminary movement, but the indifference to which it finally arrives, if indeed that inadequate word can be at all applied, has nothing in it of the philosophic aloofness. It is indeed a position as of one seated above, Udasinavad, but as the divine is seated above, having no need at all in the world, yet he does works always and is present everywhere, supporting, helping, guiding the labor of creatures. This equality is founded upon oneness with all beings. It brings in what is wanting to the philosophic equality. For its soul is the soul of peace, but also it is a soul of love. It sees all beings without expectation in the divine. It is oneself with the self of all existences, and therefore it is in a supreme sympathy with all of them. Without exception, uh, Asi, Asesana Asesana, not only with all that is good and fair and pleases nothing and no one, however vile, fallen, criminal, repellent in appearance, can be excluded from this universal, this whole souled sympathy and spiritual oneness. Here there is no room, not merely for hatred or anger or uncharitableness, but for aloofness, disdain, or any petty pride of superiority, a divine compassion for the ignorance of the struggling mind, a divine will to pour forth on it all light and power and happiness. There will be indeed for the apparent man, but for the divine soul within him, there will be more. There will be adoration and love. For far from all, from the thief and the harlot and the outcast, as from the saint and the sage, the beloved looks forth and cries to us, "This is I, he who loves me in all beings." What greater word of power for the utmost intensities and profundities of divine and universal love has been uttered by any philosophy or any religion?
Yeah. Okay. So big para, and also quite a lot of details have to be worked out. Now, he is discussing, as I told you, the philosophic indifference. This is the self. When you go to the self, okay? The knowledge of the philosopher is that of the true nature of mundane existence. You hear, what is the true nature of mundane existence? Impermanence. Nothing is permanent here, and it's all only shadow forms. There's no true reality. It's a reality in time and space. That is the knowledge of the true nature of mundane. Not in mental knowledge. Huh? Mental knowledge we all have. In the physical world, nothing is permanent. We know that. But it is spiritual knowledge. You experience it. Okay? That's a knowledge of the philosopher. Is that of the true nature of mundane existence, the transience of outward things. So something which is transient has no eternal value. So you will be quite justified in a certain sense in not paying too much attention to the physical things. So look out for those which is permanent. And what is permanent? The soul in you is permanent. So seek that. Or the self above you is permanent. Seek that. Okay? That's what it is. So this is knowledge of philosophy. The vanity of the world's differences and distinctions. The superiority of the inner calm, peace, light, self-dependence. So these are all adjectives which describe very clearly this self. Note the words carefully. Inner calm. Outwardly there may be storms, okay? In the physical world, your body mind life may be completely subjected to violent disturbances. Okay? It can be physical harm, it can be health may break down, whatever, or you may be having a lot of emotional pain or mental pain. But you are absolutely free and calm, inner calm, peace, light, and self-dependence. What is self-dependence? You realize that you are not the body mind life, you exist by yourself. And what is meant by existing by yourself? You have always been independent and you always will be. Okay? You don't depend on anybody. Okay? The soul depends on nothing. The soul is divine. Okay? It's an equality of philosophic indifference. Samatha, philosophic indifference. There is a second level. It brings a high calm, but not the greater spiritual joy. There you are. Okay? So it brings a high calm, but not the greater spiritual joy. And where can you get the greater spiritual joy? In the third level. Okay? The first level, in the ground level, man is subjected to pain and pleasure. He experiences both. But when he goes to the self, he experiences no pleasure and no pain. Okay? So no pain is wonderful, but no pleasure also. Everything is neutral. But if you want all pleasure, everything that comes to you must become pleasure, you go to the third level. Okay? So that's what Srila means by greater spiritual joy. You will get joy and power. Okay? Both you will get when you go to the third level. It's an isolated freedom. Note the word carefully, isolated freedom. Okay? You cannot become one with the universe and enjoy everything in the universe. You are isolated. You are limited to your own self. A wisdom like that of Lucretian sage, Lucretius was a Roman poet and philosopher. Okay? And he is associated with Epicureanism. Epicureanism is hedonism. Hedonism is the aim of life is ananda. The aim of life is pleasure. Okay? That's an Epicureanism. So he is the one who promoted that through a poem of his. 99 to 55 BC, before Christ, 55 years before Christ, 100 years before Christ he lived, and he died 50 years before Christ. Okay, so Roman poet. So that's what they're using here. Lucretian said, high in his superiority upon the cliff top, whence he looks down on men, tossed still upon the tempestuous waters, from which he has escaped. So very clearly the image is the tempestuous water is the experience of the human being in the physical world, pain and pleasure, okay? Difficulty and escape. All these things are there. And he has escaped and gone to the third level. He is seated on the mountain top. So I'm using the word here, the cliff top. Why? Because he is looking at a sea which is full of storms, and the man who is drowning in the sea, he is a normal man, but now the nutrition stage is sitting up there free. That's level 2. He escaped. In the end, something after all, aloof and ineffective. Aloof and ineffective. Ineffective because you are not master of yourself. Okay? You are not master of yourself. You are master only of you are in control of your soul, but not the body mind life. So, the Gita admits the philosophic motive of indifference as a preliminary movement, but the indifference to which it finally arrives, if indeed that adequate word can at all be applied, has nothing in it of the philosophic aloofness. It is indeed a position as of one seated above. Udasinavad. Ud asina. Ud above, asina seated. So seated above. Gita also uses the word kutastha, seated on the summit. There is a second level, the kutastha. But as a divine seated above, having no need at all in the world, completely cut off from the world. Yet he does works always and is present everywhere, supporting, helping, guiding the labor of creatures. The creatures don't realize that the divine is helping them, but he is doing everything, okay, through nature. This equality is founded upon oneness with all beings. Oneness with all beings, cosmic consciousness. It brings in what is wanting to the philosophic equality. For its soul is a soul of peace, but also it's a soul of love. It sees all beings without exception in the divine. It is one self with the self of all existences, and therefore it is in supreme sympathy with all of them. United with everybody in consciousness, it has got love and sympathy for all. Cosmic consciousness. Without exception. Shesha. Shesha, the word Shesha in Sanskrit means remainder. So without remainder, okay, nothing, purely, fully, without exception, not only with all that is good and fair and pleasing, nothing and no one, however vile, fallen, criminal, repellent in appearance, can be excluded from this universal, this whole soul sympathy and spiritual oneness. In other words, even the criminal, you will have sympathy for him because you are not seeing the body, mind, life, you are seeing the soul. And therefore, you will have sympathy for everybody. Here, there is no room, not merely for hatred or anger or uncharitableness, but for aloofness. Disdain, that also is not there. Okay? They are completely in sympathy with you. Aloofness is there at the second level, but at this third level, which Gita is talking about, there is no aloofness. You are in the cosmic consciousness and you are one with everybody and you have full sympathy and love for everyone. Disdain or any petty pride of superiority that you don't have. A divine compassion for the ignorance of the struggling mind. A divine will to pour forth on it all light and power and happiness there will be. Indeed, for the apparent man. Now, what is the apparent man? The body, mind, life. The real man is a self which is seated above. The apparent man is the body, mind, life. And even there you are willing to pour your power and your consciousness and your love. But for the divine soul seated within him, there will be more. There will be adoration and love. For from all, from the thief and the harlot and the outcast, as from the saint and the sage, the beloved looks forth and cries to us, "This is I." So, he who loves me in all beings. This is the 6th chapter, verse 31. Sarvabhutasthitham yo mam bhajati ekatvamanupashyatah sarvata vartamano api sayogi mai vartate. So, ekatvam anupashyatah. By seeing the oneness in everything and seated in all creatures, sarvabhutasthitham yo mam bhajati. You worship the divine seated in everything, everybody. So this is I, he who loves me in all beings. What greater word of power for the utmost intensities and profundities of divine and universal love has been uttered by any philosophy or any religion. Look at that. In fact, all Christian and other things, they hate the sinner. But here, you have to love the sinner because you are loving the divine in the sinner, not the apparent man. And the apparent man, you are trying to help. It reminds me of a very interesting incident in the ashram also, and it's very, very valid here. Okay? So, I told you the story before, but we have to link it with what we are reading now. There was this man who came and he claimed to be from the Air Force. And mother was paying a lot of attention to him. But finally, he turned out to be an imposter. He was not from the Air Force at all. He was pretending to be from the Air Force. So somebody very, full of novel human ignorance went up to mother and maybe with a little bit of a twist in the intention. But mother, you were paying so much attention to this man, but he was an absolute imposter. He was not from the Air Force at all. Because a man came from the Air Force. It was a man called Sony. Sony used to come regularly to the ashram. And he was from the Air Force. And he said that there is nobody like that with his name. So then mother said, do you think I see the outer man? I see the soul. And what the soul is, that I value as a real person. So if he comes again, he will get the same attention and the same help from me. So that's what mother said. So this is what we have to learn. To be absolutely uncritical of everybody, okay? Not to criticize anybody, because the nature of the world is full of imperfection. The nature of the world is imperfection. There is no perfection in the physical world. Okay? So if you want to criticize somebody, better to criticize yourself and see what are the faults in yourself. I have some companions in my work who are constantly finding fault with others. Okay? So this is exactly what we should not do. We should be very generous to other people's faults, and we should be very strict with our own faults. That is what the lesson is here. Okay? So we will stop here today. It was 8:36. We got 4 minutes. If there is any question, we can deal with them. Otherwise, we'll leave this for next time. The next is resignation. Okay? It is a very interesting session. But all this is theory. Then it has become absolutely practical. You have to apply all this in life. Yes, Sunki?
No question, Angada.
Okay. Then blue border is coming up on your icon, so I thought you want to say something. So shall we stop here today? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Bhagavan, Shilpa, Simon, Kiran, Sushi,
Bhagavan Dada.
Thank you.
Bhagavan.